In the heart of the Galactic Council's meeting chamber, a human delegation stepped forward, a mix of awe and steady confidence in their stride. Around them, representatives of various species murmured with a mix of curiosity and amusement. Towering over everyone were the HFY Corps, infamous Deathworlders hailing from the fiery, predator-infested planet of Valkara. Their leader, a hulking figure named Torvash, watched the humans with a thinly veiled sneer. Word had spread fast since humanity's discovery. Most council species came from gentle, temperate planets, preferring diplomacy over confrontation. But the HFY Corps prided themselves on being the galaxy's toughest, viewing all others as soft in comparison. Valkara, their world, was a constant storm of volcanic eruptions and lightning-filled skies, crawling with dangerous wildlife at every turn. For generations, they'd believed no other species could rival their strength. When Earth's invitation to the Council had been announced, the HFY Corps laughed. Another species seeking to enter the Council's fold, they scoffed. Let's see how they handle a true test. To them, Earth appeared tame, a world that couldn't possibly rival Valkara's chaos. The human representative, a lean man named Sarah Briggs, stood unfazed before Torvash. Her eyes sparkled with an understated confidence, a stark contrast to the HFY Corps leader's overbearing presence. Humans, Torvash rumbled, his voice carrying a mocking edge. Welcome. You may not be aware, but among us, only the strong truly belong. He leaned forward, his piercing eyes assessing them. We extend a challenge to test your worthiness. You may decline, of course. Sarah glanced back at her team, a small smile on her face. We appreciate your concern, Torvash. But I think we'll be fine. We accept your challenge. Laughter rumbled through the HFY Corps ranks, a deep, resonant sound that echoed across the chamber. To them, the humans' easy acceptance was almost comical, an underestimation of the trials to come. Very well, Torvash said, his voice rich with satisfaction. The trials will be held in the asteroid belt of Corinne, where the weak perish and only the strong endure. We'll see if you truly understand what it means to survive. He expected hesitation, a flicker of fear in the human's expressions, but Sarah only nodded, her calm demeanor unshaken. The human team exchanged glances, a mix of determination and quiet excitement. They didn't see this as a life-or-death fight, just a chance to prove themselves capable. Unfazed by the dramatic stakes, they accepted the terms with an unspoken unity. The council meeting adjourned, leaving the humans with little more than a day to prepare. Yet they didn't scramble or fret. Instead, they methodically prepared, checking supplies, reviewing mission protocols, and gathering data on the Corinne asteroid belt's hazards. They shared plans, dividing responsibilities without fuss, their discipline as seamless as a well-oiled machine. To any outsider, it seemed almost casual. Torvash observed their preparations with a growing sense of incredulity. How could they be so calm? The HFY Corps were the galaxy's premier survivalists. Every member of their species underwent grueling rites to prove their worth. This casualness baffled him. Surely, they would realize the trials were not to be taken lightly. The day of the trials dawned, and the teams were shuttled to the asteroid belt of Corinne. Massive, tumbling rocks, unyielding gravitational fluctuations, and waves of piercing cosmic radiation filled the zone. It was a wasteland of deadly unpredictability, a place where only those forged in the harshest fires could endure. As soon as they touched down, the humans moved into formation, their movements coordinated and precise. They set up a temporary camp, scanning the area for hazards and plotting out a strategy. Torvash watched from a distance, his eyes narrowing. The humans didn't act like warriors prepared to conquer by brute force. Instead, they focused on teamwork and meticulous planning. The first trial commenced. With minimal equipment and only basic survival tools, both the HFY Corps and humans had to survive a meteor shower while navigating an asteroid field. The HFY Corps leapt immediately into action, their hardened bodies moving through the chaos with practiced speed, muscles straining as they dodged massive rocks. To them, survival meant confronting danger head-on. But the humans took a different approach. Instead of charging through, they used the environment to their advantage. They studied the asteroid patterns, timing their movements with precision and finding natural shelters in the asteroid crevices. When a meteor passed close, they huddled together, using reflective shields and sharing equipment without a second thought. The HFY Corps, who prided themselves on individual resilience, found themselves both puzzled and irritated. They saw no honor in hiding or collaborating so openly. For them, the trial was about individual strength, a personal proving ground. To the humans, it seemed to be more about survival, plain and simple. When the shower subsided, the humans regrouped, exchanging nods of encouragement as they checked on each other. "All good?" Sarah asked, a grin breaking through as her team gave the thumbs up. They'd endured the first trial with minimal losses and moved forward without a hint of straying. The HFY Corps, despite their physical prowess, bore scrapes and bruises. Though they wouldn't admit it, their method had been riskier, leading to near misses and injuries. Torvash watched the humans from afar, a flicker of uncertainty edging into his mind. This was not how he'd expected the trial to go. Yet, he reminded himself, there were still more trials ahead, each one deadlier than the last. They would see, he told himself. The humans' calm might just be ignorance. The second trial began without warning. A sudden pulse of energy from the asteroid belt activated a series of dormant automated drones, relics from an ancient war. Each drone hovered ominously before scanning the humans and HFY Corps, then switched to a hostile mode, whirring to life and charging toward the participants with high-velocity attacks. A dozen drones darted at the humans in a synchronized assault, lasers humming with deadly precision. The HFY Corps, who typically relied on brute strength, immediately launched counterattacks, meeting the drones head-on. The humans, however, quickly evaluated the drones' attack patterns. Rather than engaging directly, they shifted into evasive tactics, splitting into small teams that could communicate quickly and adjust their maneuvers based on their observations. As a team of drones swooped down on Sarah, she dove behind an outcropping of rock, motioning to her teammate, Lewis, who quickly linked his communicator to broadcast a distortion signal. This made the drones briefly halt, scanning for a signal they could no longer lock onto. Taking advantage of the break, the humans repositioned, keeping their distance from the drones and buying themselves time. The HFY Corps leader, Torvash, eyed the humans with irritation. Their avoidance tactics appeared weak to him. Where was the honor in hiding and dodging? One of the HFY Corps bellowed a challenge, charging at a drone with a fierce cry, clawing into its metal hull until it sparked and died. The HFY Corps' approach was effective but came at a high cost. Every direct engagement drained their energy and left them exposed to counterattacks. Several HFY Corps warriors sustained burns and cuts, undeterred but visibly wearied. Sarah and her team noticed this, and instead of exhausting themselves in repeated attacks, they began leading the drones into natural traps within the asteroid terrain. They lured one drone into a narrow tunnel, where it became stuck, sparking helplessly until its power core overloaded and it exploded. Another drone was baited into colliding with an asteroid fragment that shattered its frame on impact. The humans moved strategically, conserving their energy while letting the environment work in their favor. The HFY Corps, observing this, found themselves both bewildered and grudgingly impressed. They'd never seen such unconventional tactics, strategies that relied not on raw power but on intelligent assessment and calculated risks. Torvash, watching from his vantage point, could no longer dismiss the humans' actions as mere cowardice. There was a method to their movements, a logic that allowed them to adapt fluidly to each situation. The humans' teamwork was relentless and seamless. They communicated swiftly, reading each other's signals without a word, shifting positions to provide cover or create distractions. When one drone targeted Lewis, Sarah directed her team to create interference by throwing reflective flares that blinded the drone's sensors. They exploited every second of confusion to disable or avoid the drones without unnecessary conflict. Torvash couldn't ignore the efficiency with which they operated. They were resourceful and precise, not letting pride interfere with survival. Eventually, the last drone fell silent, crashing into the asteroid belt in a sparking heap. The humans regrouped, their breathing even, only minor injuries among them. Meanwhile, the ZHYR Corps, visibly more fatigued, stood among the scattered remnants of drones they'd destroyed by sheer force. Bruised and battered, their strategy had been effective but taxing. As they took a moment to regroup, Sarah caught Torvash's eye, her expression steady but with a faint glint of satisfaction. They had survived the trial without a single fatality, relying on cooperation and adaptability. For the humans, there was no need to prove strength through unnecessary injury or dominance. To them, the objective was survival, achieved in the smartest way possible. Torvash felt a surge of frustration but also a growing curiosity. He'd seen countless species attempt these trials, all of whom had faltered without relying on brute strength. Humans, however, approached each situation with unyielding adaptability, a trait that made them difficult to predict and, he began to admit, formidable. As the humans exchanged glances, checking on each other's well-being with quick nods and words of encouragement, the ZHYR Corps watched in silence. For the first time, they began to see the humans not as mere diplomats but as potential equals in the galaxy's harshest realms. There was an unfamiliar respect growing among the ZHYR Corps, one that neither side had anticipated at the start of these trials. The trial overseer, a neutral council observer who had witnessed countless battles and confrontations, noted this change in the ZHYR Corps' demeanor. He recorded the humans' survival tactics with increasing interest, aware that this display of unity and intelligence might signal the beginning of a new chapter in the Council's understanding of what it truly meant to be a Deathworlder. The third trial began with a deliberate quiet that unsettled both the humans and the ZHYR Corps. Unlike the previous tests, where the threats were immediate and physical, this time they found themselves in a dense, disorienting fog that blanketed every inch of the asteroid's surface. Vision was limited to barely a few feet, and the silence was absolute, amplifying every footstep and breath. The humans exchanged tense looks, recognizing the psychological edge to this challenge. This time, the trial played into the mind, testing resolve, resilience, and focus under duress. The fog seemed to move unnaturally, curling around them in swirls that seemed alive, shifting with subtle whispers and sounds that were just out of place enough to spark paranoia. The humans, alert to these unusual sensations, huddled closer, watching each other's backs. Sarah, the de facto leader, reminded her team to stick together, emphasizing that panic was the real enemy here. The ZHYR Corps, though physically powerful and accustomed to Death World challenges, began showing signs of straying. Their culture emphasized bravery and facing threats head-on, but in the heavy mist, they found themselves at odds with an enemy they couldn't confront. Some grew restless, moving in search of an exit or a visible adversary, while others tried to bellow into the fog, only for their voices to be swallowed by the oppressive silence. Humans, however, adapted with measured calm, anchoring each other's focus with light humor and clear, soft-spoken instructions. They tapped their boots rhythmically to maintain grounding and checked in periodically with brief, comforting signals. They were aware that their true trial was not physical but mental, and they responded by reinforcing their unity rather than trying to overpower an invisible enemy. Gradually, the fog thickened, and shapes began to form within it, faint silhouettes of creatures that seemed both alien and eerily familiar. These weren't real entities. They were psychological projections, an effect that amplified each species' inherent fears. For the ZHYR Corps, the shadows took on the forms of giant predators from their own world, legendary beasts they'd heard tales of as children. Some warriors recoiled instinctively, drawing their weapons as the fog tightened its grip, each of them convinced they were alone in this personal nightmare. For the humans, however, the shapes were more abstract. The mist took the form of Earth's own hazards, fires, floods, towering waves, all illusions crafted from ancestral fears and instincts. Yet the humans didn't engage the shadows directly. Sarah quickly signaled to her team, understanding these illusions were crafted to target their minds, not their bodies. They knew the shapes weren't real, that they could endure by anchoring themselves in each other's presence. The ZHYR Corps watched in bewilderment as the humans leaned into their instincts to work as a unit, forming a circle and keeping each other close. Torvash, who had been fighting phantoms in the mist, paused as he observed the humans' steady composure. Frustration simmered within him. How could they face these illusions without fighting back? What were they relying on that his people didn't understand? The trial stretched on, with every moment dragging heavily under the oppressive silence. The humans shared whispers of encouragement, reminding each other to focus on their breaths, their senses. They counted heartbeats, grounded themselves in tactile sensations, and reminded each other of their purpose. Gradually, they noticed that the illusions weakened, the fog lifting ever so slightly as their fear gave way to focus and resolve. The HFY Corps, exhausted and tense, started to lose their composure. One warrior lashed out wildly, trying to dispel an illusory beast that only seemed to grow in response to his panic. Torvash, watching the humans, finally realized their approach. They were resisting by refusing to let fear control them. He looked around at his own warriors, seeing the toll that panic and isolation had taken on them. With an effort of will, Torvash called his warriors together, directing them to form a circle, much like the humans. Reluctantly, the HFY Corps followed his lead, their trust in him outweighing their individual fear. Though unfamiliar with the humans' quiet, measured techniques, the HFY Corps attempted to mirror them, taking strength from the presence of their companions. Slowly, the images in the fog began to dissipate, leaving only faint shadows that no longer had power over them. Finally, the fog receded fully, leaving both groups standing together on the asteroid's surface, weary but unbroken. Torvash met Sarah's gaze, a newfound respect clear in his eyes. He saw now that there was a strength in unity, in the refusal to let fear rule one's actions. The humans had endured not through brute force or aggression, but by trusting each other, by accepting vulnerability as a means to survive together. As the trial overseer emerged from the shadows, he nodded in approval, recording his observations. This trial had been intended to measure not physical strength but mental resilience, a test of survival by unity rather than solitary might. The humans had passed, showing the HFY Corps a side of survival that extended beyond physical capability, a side built on trust, camaraderie, and focus. For the humans, the experience was challenging but affirming. They'd faced the psychological pressure as they did Earth's own uncertainties, by standing together, finding strength in numbers and clarity in purpose. In that quiet moment after the fog lifted, they realized they hadn't just survived the trial. They'd taught their HFY Corps counterparts an unspoken lesson about survival in its truest form. As the humans and HFY Corps gathered for the final trial, a sense of anticipation filled the air. The humans had already shown remarkable resilience, but this last challenge would require more than just physical endurance or psychological resolve. The trial overseer explained that they would face one of the asteroid belt's most volatile regions, where tectonic instability created dangerous fault lines and where powerful electromagnetic storms were known to disable technology. To make matters worse, the area was filled with razor-sharp crystal formations and unpredictable bursts of radiation. The goal was simple: reach the extraction point on the far side of the region within a limited time. The HFY Corps looked at the humans with a mix of caution and admiration. Even Torvash, who had once dismissed the humans as inferior, now saw them as equals, creatures who had survived trials not through raw strength but through resilience and ingenuity. And in this final trial, they'd have to rely on every skill they had learned so far. As soon as the signal was given, both groups began the perilous journey across the rugged terrain. With every step, they encountered new obstacles. The ground shook intermittently, sending rocks and debris tumbling down slopes and creating impassable cracks. Electromagnetic pulses surged sporadically, forcing them to disable most of their electronic equipment to prevent permanent damage. Navigating the landscape became a game of precision and caution. Suddenly, a fissure opened up between them, separating half of the human team from the rest of the group. Sarah, quick to respond, shouted instructions, telling her team to use the portable grappling lines they'd packed as a precaution. Her team members secured their lines, but the HFY Corps, accustomed to relying on brute strength, struggled with the delicate equipment. In a moment of tension, Torvash's line became tangled, leaving him dangerously close to the edge of the fissure. Without hesitation, one of the humans, a young medic named Jason, moved to assist. Ignoring the gap in communication and the looming danger, he showed Torvash how to secure the line properly, demonstrating patience despite the urgency. Torvash hesitated, pride warring with the practical need for assistance. But seeing Jason's steady resolve, he relented, allowing himself to be guided. The gesture, simple as it was, marked a turning point for him, an acknowledgement that survival sometimes meant accepting help. As they moved forward, electromagnetic bursts grew more frequent. Without their equipment, they relied on instinct, observation, and each other's strengths to navigate. The humans pointed out subtle signs of stability in the ground, reading the shifts and cracks as they might read Earth's own volatile landscapes. Sarah's team communicated efficiently, using signals and minimal words, conserving energy and staying alert. Meanwhile, the HFY Corps, inspired by the humans, adjusted their approach. They stopped relying solely on physical prowess and began working together as a unit. They mimicked the humans' methods of nonverbal communication and learned to analyze the terrain with a new level of attentiveness. The humans noticed the change, silently acknowledging the shift with nods of respect. Halfway through the journey, a storm began to build overhead. Dark clouds gathered, crackling with electromagnetic energy, and the air grew thick with static. Knowing that the storm could prove fatal if they were caught in an open area, Sarah directed the group toward a cluster of crystal formations that might provide some cover. The crystals were sharp, however, and even a slight misstep could result in serious injuries. As they crouched under the formations, the storm intensified. Bolts of energy shot through the air, striking the crystals and causing them to emit blinding flashes of light. The humans and HFY Corps huddled together, bracing against the onslaught. Despite the chaos, Sarah and Torvash coordinated, each leading their respective teams through the worst of the storm, timing their movements with precision to avoid the most intense bursts. At one point, a young HFY Corps warrior became separated from the group, caught in a sudden surge of radiation. Seeing the danger, Sarah didn't hesitate. She broke cover, reaching the warrior in time to shield him with her body, absorbing part of the blast herself. The HFY Corps watched in shock and admiration, realizing that these humans, who they had once considered weak, were willing to risk their lives for others without hesitation. The storm passed, leaving the landscape scorched but stable. Sarah's team quickly checked for injuries, treating the wounded HFY Corps with the limited medical supplies they had. In that quiet aftermath, a bond formed, a silent, unspoken understanding between the two species. They were no longer separate teams in a trial. They were one group, united by shared survival and mutual respect. With the extraction point now in sight, they pressed on together, moving as a cohesive unit. They supported each other over the last few obstacles, helping one another with the ease of old allies rather than new acquaintances. When they finally reached the designated zone, weary but alive, the trial overseer greeted them with an approving nod. As the humans and HFY Corps stood side by side, the overseer acknowledged the success of both groups, commending their cooperation and resilience. Torvash turned to Sarah, his once proud and isolated demeanor softened by genuine respect. "You are worthy, human," he said simply. "You are true Deathworlders." Sarah responded with a quiet nod, knowing that the journey they had shared was far more profound than any title. They had proven themselves not through competition, but through unity, through recognizing the strength in each other's differences and facing challenges together. In the days that followed, the alliance between humans and the HFY Corps took on new meaning, transcending any previous notions of rivalry. They became allies, a rare bond between Deathworlders from different worlds. For both species, the trials had transformed them, forging a partnership grounded in trust and respect, a foundation that would serve them well in the many challenges yet to come. In this alliance, each found something they had been missing. The HFY Corps discovered strength in vulnerability, and the humans found camaraderie in the vast reaches of space. Together, they faced the galaxy not as separate warriors, but as Deathworlders united.